you can watch a movie, you can come here as well.
A 9-month program, people will lose momentum. Oh man, I have to go keep this training program.
Once we attended the 4th or the 5th yard, we were just waiting for the next invite.
I haven't seen an employment law session done out in the open with like 100 people.
The connect, the interaction, the content, the instructors, the speakers.
There's a lot of creativity, but there's also a lot of logic involved.
The offerings were elitist, but the program itself busted the myth.
You and Vale asked us, where else have you done this before? And we said, nowhere.
Just wow.
If we have to make this journey of making VMware a $10+ billion company, we need our people managers to be empowered and motivated at all levels.
If you really look at the products that we have and the customers we serve, it's really solving those complex business problems, or the problems that customers go through, and people actually solve them. It's got to be starting with the people. How do we empower them, work with them, and make them successful for their products?
How do I mentally associate that innovation DNA of VMware to what I do? How does that translate into my group?
VMware is not just about work, it's about finding meaning in our own lives.
The whole 9 yards.
Whole 9 yards.
Whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards.
I don't think we even argued about the name.
Like the name, it has a 9-month duration. Each module is no more than 3 hours a piece, which means you can kind of digest it in bite-sized chunks. That's what makes the learning very powerful.
I think the story starts there. Let's just take you through the journey together.
Yeah. Last one.
We had those cubes being put as part of the branding efforts that we had.
It automatically visual
representation of what it actually
going to talk about. It's like modern art.
What is the role of a people manager?
In my mind, everybody is a people manager.
VMware is on a path, and for us to be able to achieve that goal, that vision that we have set for ourselves, people managers are a vehicle to that end. From our Voice of VMware survey that we do every year, I think the nature of the problems was similar to what we typically experience in other organizations as well.
I think Vale and I were saying, let's track attendance, we'll make sure we'll send out emails. At that point in time, you stopped us and said, let's not do that.
Now that we think about it, there was no attendance sheet sent out. I was like, wow, it was out of your own interest.
If we hark back to even our college experiences, we have those which come to mind where without necessarily demarcating roles for people, people still pitch in.
And I had never heard of that concept of Friends of the Fest, which is essentially a multiplier effect.
About 30-35 people actively contributed in design and delivery.
They also put us on the path of good collisions.
I was friend of the fest. I felt like I'm privileged to get a preview to what's going to happen. When we were friends of the fest, we felt like it was our own piece that we really had to commit to and do really well.
One thing that stood out is that there was upward collaboration and there was lateral collaboration as well.
When you have people across different levels, you need to be able to make aspirational content simple.
And it was level agnostic.
Level agnostic, yeah.
That makes you understand somebody else's perspective and makes your life easy.
VMware as a company, we're trying to go for full transparency. And what I mean by that is that there are no real secrets here.
It was interesting to really look at our Voice of VMware survey results. We realized that sometimes there's also a lack of complete understanding of rewards.
There's an art and a science for compensation, but employees should be aware of it. And more importantly, managers should understand what's behind it so that when they're making their decisions and having the conversation with their team members, they're being, hey, let me tell you why I'm doing this.
It also gave us a good sense as to why there are certain levels, there are certain bands, which can ultimately help decide what an employee gets compensated.
I was able to philosophically apply them to the budgeting cycle we had on from a promotion standpoint. That was an absolutely transformational session.
I remember Mohit getting a little nervous about employee relations and 120 people. Is there some hush-hush activity each time there is a problem in employee relations that is done behind closed doors?
As a manager, I face it every day, every hour.
How to tackle a tricky situation, how to tackle emergency in the office. Those kinds of things are never talked about in textbooks.
But there isn't any foundation that is created for people managers to deal with it effectively.
If someone lost a laptop or someone has not turned to office,
there is no right or wrong, but again, guiding the people to think in some of those directions, that was a very unique experience.
Change, innovation, risk that VMware talks about has a lot to do with being childlike.
There was this session about resetting factory settings done by Amin, the story wala.
Hello.
Now, children are not judgmental about each other. And when leaders stop being judgmental about each other, collaboration happens, teamwork happens, and people come together and play.
Somewhere we forget that, not just in corporate organizations, but also as we grow older.
Hey, here's an organization that wants to go back to childhood. That's so wonderful. Let me take them on that journey.
We had to write something with the left hand.
Yeah.
I had one of my colleagues, Uttam, whom I had to draw something for, and the best I could draw is get a skeleton over there. Nothing better than that, poor guy. In a very fun way, it taught you that if you genuinely put in efforts to do something, you can actually try and get it.
When leaders go back to their childhood, organization stops being afraid. And when you stop being afraid, you start taking risks. You start exploring new areas. You start doing new things. That's the fundamental need for innovation.
There were actually two threads that bound the 9 modules together. The first one was the VMware context of disk innovation change, the voice of VMware. The second thread was the subtexts.
When we had asked people managers, those who had children, do you think growth pains are good or bad? As parents, they knew it, so said no, growth pains are good because they happen because of growth.
For new managers, growth pain is a fresh experience sometimes. They've stepped out from the roles they were doing, which were solely contributing themselves to now managing performance of lots of people. For experienced people, it's compounded because there's also a sense of deja vu.
As people managers, we are trying to meet targets, we're trying to meet what's required on a daily basis.
As leaders today, there's a doctor's fatigue.
There are many times when we are going home, when I'm driving home and I'm thinking, how do I overcome this situation? How do I speak with this leader and make him do or make her do the right things? That's the mental strength that Dr. Bhatt's session, gave me.
We were very lucky to get Dr. Shyam Bhatt. We wanted somebody from the healing industry.
What he spoke about is how managers can have strong mental framework to be able to deal with various challenges at workplace.
He actually switched off the lights in the conference room and we had a full 15-minute meditation session.
A few moments are gone from 3 to 1, and then you can slowly and gently open your eyes.
That's the first time he made me do meditation, and I was like, wow.
But they realized that those are important things they need to do in order to address their own fatigue as such.
I think people managers of today prefer assimilating some information, then kind of customizing it to their specific requirements. We engaged with Platonic, which is a theatre group, and we adapted Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats.
Hey, look! That's our office there! We had characters and we had these 6 colored hats. So visually, people could associate the color of a hat with a technique that this person would employ to come to a decision.
Each one of us looks at things in a different color. Instead of putting my color to it, try and put a more fair judgment to situation.
And I was able to take it to my team. We'd use ribbons instead of hats. That had a huge lasting impact, at least on my organization.
I just love your energy, and I think the energy that you pass on to your team is absolutely fantastic.
Preeti being a quadriplegic, she had no movement below her neck.
Just imagine life not able to move anything other than your eyelids. And then the lady now is a motivational speaker. I think 50% of the crowd broke down. And that was a prime example of progressing under constraint.
She taught us how blessed we are.
What happened, I remember, after the program, some people came and said, I feel very embarrassed. I'm not going to go easily and ask for, budgets, resources.
If they can come good in such tough situations, then what we face in a professional career is probably nothing close to that.
We had a few people coming out and then saying how senior leaders in the company have to manage and balance.
How do you make your boss's goals?
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna make Celestia's goal. This is gonna be really fun. It kind of broadened my horizon of how what I do create a lasting impact to my boss's career path as well.
last year to be a high impact one. Managers learned how to collaborate amongst themselves in challenging circumstances. We did that half-day cooking session with Samarthanam, a city-based NGO.
Technology is something which doesn't discriminate. I think cooking is similar. If there are 20 people grating carrot, you couldn't tell who's manager or who's not.
We went and cooked for like 650 people.
Trust me, in the dry run, we really thought, is this really going to happen? Are we really prepared? I mean, are we going to get the food by 11:30?
It was like, people were on the job. There were the people who were cutting, there were people doing this, there were people coordinating.
I was literally crying, because I was cutting onions.
And times like that is what assumed leadership comes out.
There were a lot of kids asking for some vegetables when I was serving them sambar. There are times when we waste vegetables on our plates. And I saw here kids who wanted more and more of it because they really liked it and they probably don't get it.
When they saw these laddus and the sweets and wow, the amount of happiness was like, wow, it was an eye-opener.
In fact, I told my wife before I was leaving that I'm going to cook and she laughed her lungs out. But I walked in home with an apron and I still have it at home. One day if I ever enter the kitchen to try and cook something, I'm probably going to use that.
With our 100-odd managers who went through this whole 9 yards and seeing their positive feedback, I think it makes most sense to explore taking it global.
If we have to aspire to take this global, should we tweak some minor parts of it?
I don't think I'd change a thing. I think the program itself is very, very relevant for wherever you are as far as business and location.
I think it would be just the right icing on the cake of an empowerment and motivation program for them to be empowered and motivated to take it global to their own colleagues.
This has been the best experience I've ever gone through when it comes to any kind of training program.
Whenever we'd come for any work here, people would ask us mischievously that what's the next yard?
The philosophy had a lasting impact for me for the rest of my life.
Learning by experience is what I think really fits well with this entire whole 9 years journey.
It was a feeling of contentment.
This is special.
9 yards, make it 22 yards, make it bigger, stronger.
After these 9 yards, I'm more calm and composed when the going gets tough.
This complete 9 yards, I've made so many friends.
Whole 9 awesome yards.
It was a lifetime experience for me and it's just amazing.
In terms of the program design and how we delivered it, I don't think there's anything that we would change.
There are training programs, then there are good holistic training development programs, then there was whole 9 yards. That's it.
Wow.
That's